Okay, this video we're going to talk about setting up your devices for your 3.2.1 auto treat system. We have already covered in the auto batch system, the auto batch video, device setup as it relates to conveyors and scales. So in this video we're going to focus on the treating equipment and the parameters as they relate to the treater. So to look at the device parameters and the device settings for the treater, we want to navigate to the treater page up along the bar under screen menu and treater. It will take us to the page with the treater graphics. We see the treater and our 4 pump packs. And as before with the other devices, each device is represented with a graphical image, and we can open up the settings window for that device by simply pressing right on that device. So if we look at this page, we'll click on the different devices. This atomizer, this gray diamond, represents the atomizer. If we push on that, it will open up an atomizer setup window with a motor fault time and an alert at hour window. We can click on these and change them. These are just service and maintenance fields that you may or may not use. The seed wheel is right above the atomizer, this gray circle. If we click on that, it will open up the seed wheel setup window. Again, we have the motor fault time and the alert at field. On the bottom, we have a couple calibration parameters that are set. The global cal factor is set at 1.06. This is something that is set by KSI by default. You will not need to change this unless directed by a KSI technician. And the adjust enabled tank by percentage is set at 80% by default. We will see when we go look at the bins, each bin has a auto adjust for the seed wheel. So from run to run, we're looking at what actually went through the seed wheel from the scale weight versus what the seed wheel actually thought went through it, and we're making an adjustment on that specific bin. And this 80% is how much we're adjusting by from run to run. So we can exit out of the seed wheel. The inlet high level sensor, if we click on this hopper, it will open up a window with just a off delay time. So this is set at 2 seconds. Generally speaking, that is where you want it unless you have a larger hopper. What this is saying is when the high level sensor gets hit, it's going to shut down your conveyor feeding your sensor. And then once the seed goes away from that sensor, it's going to wait for this amount of time before that conveyor turns back on. So in this case, 2 seconds after the seed goes away from the high level, our conveyor and gate are going to open back up and fill the hopper again. The specific, or I should say more general parameters for the treater and timers, if we click right on the drum, we'll open up a larger window with quite a bit on it. We'll break this window down just a little bit, and the different settings that are here, we'll go through each one. Along the top, there's 2 buttons, and it's kind of broken up into two stages, 2 treating stages. On the left, we have it around where I'm circling with my mouse is the stage 1. This is actually the stage that is treating your seed. This is our treating cycle, where we're starting the drum and applying the treatment and then shutting the drum down. And then on the far right here under treat cycle stage 2, this is actually the clean out stage. So each of these buttons on the top are clickable, and it's just basically the drum direction. So the green is the drum is running forward, and the yellow is the drum running reverse, which with a bare treater, a bare drum treater, this is generally how you want it to run. If we push this button, it's going to turn yellow, and now the drum is going to run reverse for stage 1 and stage 2. This is really only used if you're running seed through your treater that you're not treating and you want it to clean out faster and you don't want the drum to hold any seed, so you could set it to run reverse the entire time. We'll put it back and forward. So let's break down treating cycle stage 1 a little bit further. This column here, we have the startup column. So within this call, what's going on here is the drum is the drum and the atomizer are basically starting. We want to give them time to get up to speed before we send seed to them. So this pre-start for time is 10 seconds. So once the treater starts, we're going to give the drum and the atomizer 10 seconds to turn on before we turn the seed wheel on or open our Vari-Rate gate. Down here on the bottom, this text, the green text is the equipment or the devices that are running during this stage, and the red text are devices that are off. So in this stage, we can see that the drum is going to be running and the atomizer is going to be running. The seed wheel, the liquid pumps, and the monitor are all off. The next column is the treating stage during the stage 1, and all we're doing here is we can see that all the equipment is turned on, and we just have a start monitor in 20 seconds. Once the seed wheel or the gate have opened up and are delivering seed to your treater and your pumps are on, we want to give the system enough time to get the pumps up to speed before we trigger a fault. That may be 20 seconds. You may tighten that window down to 10 seconds, whatever that might be. After this 20 seconds, our fault monitor for our pumps are going to turn on, and they're going to fall out after this time if the pumps fall out of tolerance. The next column is the shutdown cycle. During this shutdown period, the drum and the atomizer are going to continue to run, as you can see by this text, but the seed wheel has turned off, and the liquid pumps are off, and our fault monitor, again, has turned back off. So the first text box here is turn pumps off after 0 seconds. So as soon as the treater stops, as soon as our seed wheel low level no longer senses seed, we want to turn our pumps off 0 seconds after that point. You could increase this if you wanted to continue to apply treatment after the seed had left the low level for a second or half a second. Turn seed wheel off after. So again, we're going off of the low level. So once the low level no longer senses seed, we're going to let our seed wheel run for 2 more seconds. And then we're going to let the drum run for 15 more seconds in forward. After 15 seconds, the drum is going to turn off, and we're going to move to the next section here. You can see these arrows are telling you we're progressing this way. So the next section is basically once the drum has returned to 0 speed, it's going to sit idle for this amount of time, 1 second, which is adjustable, and then it's going to turn on in reverse and clean out. The drum is going to run in reverse for 120 seconds in this example. We could click on this and change it, and then it would run for this amount of time if that was 180 seconds. Generally, it is 180 seconds or thereabout, depending on your specific setup. And then after this time, after 120 seconds, we're going to run our loadout conveyor for an additional 20 seconds, or 40 seconds, or 10 seconds, whatever that might be. And then after this 20 seconds, the drum's going to turn off, and the conveyor's going to turn off, and your treater's going to shut down. Along the very bottom, we have a drum auto speed. This is how fast your drum is going to run when it is in auto, 75%. We like to see this usually not higher than 90%. And then we have a alert app for the drum motor, again, just to monitor the use of that motor. And then once we're done here, we can just exit out of this. Each treatment pack, as we call it, also has some settings for it, and these are accessed just by clicking right on the tank. So if we click on this tank, it opens up an IPAC 910 setup. That's the one we clicked on, and we have some settings here that are specific to each mixed tank or treatment tank. First of all, we can set which pump we have. If it's a high rate or a low rate pump, we just toggle back and forth between these 2 buttons. There's also an option for custom rate. If low rate or high rate are not the best parameter settings for your system, we can select a custom rate and define that in the KSI technical setup page. If you use that, that's going to be set up by a KSI technician as well for your site. The next 2 parameters are the calibration acceptance window. In this case, it's an IP 910% under and an IP 910% over, and these are both at 15%. And what this window does is it only comes into play when we're calibrating the pump. If we're calibrating our pump and we end up with 75 ounces in our cow tube and our flow meter reads 60 ounces, we're over 15% off in that air. And if we try to enter that, it's not going to let us, and it's going to air out. The purpose of these are just mainly to keep you from making a mistake when calibrating your pump, from entering an additional 0 or an additional number. We don't want you to be off a dramatic amount when it is not right. You can increase this acceptance window if you want. If you know that you really are calibrating and whatever the treatment you're using really is 20% off, you can change these amounts. The fault monitor setup, these 4 fields, in this case we are letting our fault is going to be triggered when we are 5% over or 5% under the target for 10 seconds or more. Again, these windows can be tightened. You could set this 0% over limit for 3%. So if we go 3% under our target or over our target for, say, 5 seconds, a fault's going to be triggered. And when that fault is triggered, it's going to turn off your pumps, turn off your seed wheel, and wait for you to, as the operator, to reset the system before it's going to start back up. And then we have some hour usage meter on the bottom for each flow meter. The last thing on this page I want to quickly talk about is the auxiliary setup down here on the bottom. Within this button, if we click this button, it opens up a window where we can set up 2 different auxiliary devices. Your AutoTreat system there's a connection panel where all your pumps plug into the bottom of that connection panel. It's going to be mounted somewhere near your treater. On the side of that panel are 2 120-volt plugs that you can plug in 2 devices, and those devices will be controlled based on these parameters right here. So our auxiliary applicator number 1, if we were applying water, for example, we could set up the delay on time and the delay off time, and this is based on the low level sensor. And if we enable this or disable this, it's going to turn on or turn off based on that low level and these timers. So that's basically everything on this treater page. Every pump has a setup parameter. We've talked about the treaters. The next thing I want to talk about is the tank setup. We already talked about setting up the bin parameters in the auto batch setup, but I just want to touch on one thing that was not discussed. Is with the auto batch setup, you don't have a seed wheel, and so there's not a seed wheel cow weight needed in auto batch setup. But with AutoTreat, if you have a seed wheel, the seed wheel cow weight is stored right here. So whenever we select a bin and run from that bin, it's going to use this value right here as our cow weight for the seed wheel. So you can do this when you're filling your bins, when it's the first time you pull from your bins. You want to put that value in here. Say you weigh your seed in the cow tube, and it's 1,055 grams. We would put that value here. With VariRate, if you have VariRate, this value is not needed. But with a seed wheel and AutoTreat, this is where you store that value. Here on the right, this auto adjust button is clickable. Green is on. If I click it, it turns blue, which means it's off. I mentioned earlier about the adjustment for each seed source, and at the end of every run, we're looking at what actually went through the seed wheel and what the seed wheel thought it did, and we're making adjustments on that. If this is green, which we recommend, it's going to make those adjustments every run to fine-tune that seed wheel over time. So once we've put in our seed wheel cow weight, we can exit out. It's going to save those settings back to the database. Okay, so we've got our devices are set up. We've got our tank set up. The next thing we generally want to do is set up our customers. Again, I'm not going to spend much time on this because it was covered in the auto batch portion of this video. But if we quickly go to our database, we can see the customers that we have entered in the database. And we would go to the database, click on Customers, and Show Customers. and it's going to open up our customer table. As you can see, we don't have any customers here entered, so we would want to add all of our customers either one at a time or import them before the season started. The next thing we want to do with the AutoTreat system is enter our recipes. So within the database, if we go to treatment recipes and show treatment recipes, we can see the treatment recipes that we have entered. We have a custom recipe and we have a no treatment recipe. So we're probably going to have more recipes than that we're going to want to use, and so we want to get those set up before we start running. We recommend setting up, adding new recipes or editing recipes from the touchscreen as opposed to from the database. It's a little more straightforward and a little easier to follow from the touchscreen, I should say. So we're going to go back to our touchscreen and go to our home screen, and we're going to create a recipe from the touchscreen. So down here in the bottom right is our recipe section. So if we click on Manage Recipe, it's going to open up the recipe that we have loaded with this order, custom recipe. So let's say we want to create a new recipe. We'll just call it Treatment 23. So we'll type that in, space 23. This is our treatment name. This name is important because this is going to be what you're going to use to search for that recipe. You want to make sure that something about that name is easy to remember or unique. And then when you are setting up a new order, you'll select this recipe based on this name. After we've given it a name, we then apply what we're going to treat from the different IPACs. So if we can say what we're going to deliver, so let's say in IPAC 1, we have item XX. Oops, let's spell item right. Item XX. Hit enter. And we can now define the rate over here on the right. So as you can see, this 3.1 ounces per 100 was left over from the item that was in here before. So if we wanted to apply 2.8, we would type in 2.8 and push enter, and that'd be the amount that we're going to apply, 2.8 ounces per 100 weight. We can add a second item by clicking on the second field, and we'll just say this is item XY. And let's say this item we want to apply based on ounces per unit. With 3.2.1, we can choose a recipe rate in either ounces per 100 weight or milligrams of active ingredient per seed or in ounces per unit. So let's say this item we're treating from a slurry that needs to be treated at 2.8 ounces per unit. So we want to clear out this ounces per 100, put in 0 there. Over here on the right, we can type in our ounces per unit here, 2.8, and then press and hold this button with the arrow here for 3 seconds, and it'll populate our AI per seed and our AI per ounce fields. So now when we use this recipe and we are treating this item XY, it's going to look at the seeds per pound in from the seed source that we've selected, and it's going to apply the correct amount of treatment based on 2.8 ounces per unit that we entered. So when you automatically change from seed source 1, that's 3,000 seeds per pound, to seed source 2, that's 2,800 seeds per pound, it's going to adjust and apply the correct amount of treatment based on that seed size. Once we have this recipe in here that we want to do a save as. Save as creates this as a new item, or a new recipe, I should say, in the database. We don't want to do a save because that would overwrite the recipe that we loaded. So we want to do a save as. We do save as, and it says, are you sure you want to create a new recipe using the current values? We say yes, and it's going to add this recipe into the database. So we could, at this point, we could go ahead and add another recipe. We could add treatment 54 and add all the items and the treatment rates, and do a save as, all from the touchscreen, so that these recipes are in here when we get ready to run. So once we're done, we push the green check in the bottom right corner, and we'll go back to our home screen. At this point, you can see that our order, this light turned red, and it says that we can't start our order, and that's okay because we weren't interested in creating a pickup order. We were just interested in creating recipes. We will create a pickup order a little bit later in the video. Okay, now that we have our device set up, complete, and our customer and recipes entered into our database, we are ready to do the task of calibrating our pump and our flow meter. This is something that needs to be done at least twice a day for 180 seconds if you have a flow meter. The calibration of the flow meter is a critical step in ensuring accuracy of your auto treat system. To calibrate our flow meter, we want to navigate to the treater page, and to begin with, we want to make sure we turn our valve so that our liquid will be flowing back up into our cow tube, and we need to get liquid to the 0 line on our cow tube. So to do this, we can select our IP910. We can turn our pump in forward, or and set the rate, put it in forward and let it go up above the 0 line and then drain it back down. Or alternatively, if you press and hold right on the pump from this graphic, your pump is going to run in jog mode until we release it. When we release it, we then go over to our valves and switch the valve so that it is at the 0 mark. Once we have it on 0, we open up our calibrate window by pressing the calibrate button. We'll notice that when we're in here, we also have the option of doing a jog. If we press and hold this jog button, our pump is going to run again. Okay, once we're in here, the first step in running a calibration process is setting the pump speed and the run for time. The pump speed needs to be low enough so that we do not overfill our cow tube, and the run for time we recommend 180 seconds. And this is a high rate pump, and so we want to probably set our pump speed at 10% so that we don't overfill it. So our pump is going to run for 180 seconds for 10%. Once we have that set up, we're going to go ahead and press start cow cycle. At this time, our pump is going to begin running, and we'll see our run for time here counting down from 180 to 0. You can see in this window our total calculated is climbing. It's at 4.74, and that is the flow meter accumulating totalizing how much liquid has ran through it. Once this 180 seconds is complete, we're going to read how much liquid was in the cow tube, and we're going to enter that value right here. If you recall earlier, when we were in and I'll just select this pump. If I click this cow pump, we talked about this IP910, this calibration acceptance window, 15% under and 15% over. I'm going to exit out of this. This, when we're doing a calibration process, is where that comes into play, this right here. So say our flow meter accumulates, totalizes to 70 ounces, and we look at the cow tube and we read 90. Well, something was not probably right because we're farther off than is typical. We either didn't start at 0 or we read the tube wrong. And so if this was at 75 and we put 90 in here and pushed calculate, since that is outside of our 15% over or 15% under window, it's going to abort that, and it's going to say rerun calibration cycle or re-enter a new value. At that point, we can decide if we had a wrong reading and enter the correct one, or if we return the liquid to 0 and run it again. The other thing I will point out is we are currently calibrating a flow meter. There are some sites that use a scale and control that pump off of loss and weight from a scale instead of through a flow meter. There is still a calibration process required for that loss and weight system. We're not calibrating the flow meter anymore. We're figuring the density on the liquid. But the process, the calibration process that you will go through will be exactly the same as this, and you will be trained specifically on your system that you have. So again, the process is exactly the same, whether you have a flow meter or a scale, but we still do have to run it multiple times a day to ensure accuracy of the system. As you can see, we're at 15 seconds, counting down. As soon as that's done, the pump will stop, and at that point we'll read what the cal tube says and enter that in. Okay, it has stopped, and if we look at the cal tube, it shows 67. So we'll put in, and the calculated amount was 64.68. So we'll put in 67, press enter. And again, we want to make sure that we press calculate again. Don't close out at this point. We're not done. We need to press calculate, and this cal factor will change from something other than 1. Once we're done with this, we can close that window, and our treatment pack 1 is complete. And we would do this process, that calibrate process, for all 4 or however many pumps that we have on our site. All right, now that we are done calibrating our pump packs, we are ready to set up an order and run an order. To do this, again, we can do this from the database. We could go to the database and add a pickup order through the form, the web app form. We will do this from the touchscreen for this scenario. So we'll navigate to our home screen. And currently we have up here test order 56, but we want to create a new order, and we want to select the recipe and a customer that we know we want to run this order for. So our first step is going into manage order and giving it an order name. We will call this test order 70. It's important when creating a new order from the touchscreen that we give it a new order name before we do save as. The order name has to be unique. There cannot be another order in your system with the same order name when we create it, or else it's going to, when we press save as, it's going to not let us save it and tell us that that order name already exists. So this has to be a unique order for our order that we're creating. So we can go ahead and run tank 1, and we're going to run 50 units. And we'll turn auto treat on by selecting it. We will leave shots disabled. We want to turn our auto loadout. We want to enable that, so our loadout conveyors will turn on automatically based on, and then turn off based on timers that we have set up in the scale setup, in the treater drum setup. Once we have that done, we'll press this check mark. We want to select the customer. Let's go to our database and find a customer that we want to choose. Let's choose Wilkerson. So we want to clear all these light yellow fields are searchable, so we want to clear everything out. And we can type in Wilkerson or part of his name. That should find it. And pressing search. So our customer name is Wilkerson Farms. We'll select him. And we have Wilkerson Farms. We'll use this test recipe 23. Again, remember this was the recipe we entered as 3.5 ounces per unit. And when we calculated that, we got 0.025 AI per seeds at 1 AI per ounce. These are the factors that when we enable our bin and tell the system we're ready to treat, it will give us a ounces per 100 rate. So once we have this entered, we want to do save as to save this as a new order. Say yes. And it's going to save this back to the database. Once all our lights turn green and our master start shows up, we know that we're in good shape and ready to run. One thing we want to check before we start is we want to go to our loadout page, make sure that our bypass valve is indeed through the treater, which it is. That being the case, we can return home. Make sure our devices are in auto by pressing Global Auto. And we can press Master Start. Again, the run status down here is going to tell us what the system is waiting for. You can see that it's waiting for an operator to enable a bin. So this Tank 1 Enable button shows up because we selected Tank 1 in our Manage Order, so we're going to enable that tank. And when we do that, the scale is going to be filling. And the auto treat run status says it's waiting for seed at inlet hopper. So the treater part of this order is not going to run or be triggered until seed gets to the low level on the treater. We can, however, see that up here on our test recipe 23, when we enabled that tank, our treatment 1 from our tank 1 is going to be applying at 7 ounces per 100. That's again based on 3.5 ounces per unit, and the unit being 140,000 seeds per unit, and on our tank 1, it was 2,800 seeds per pound. So we're treating 7 ounces per 100 weight from our treatment 1 tank. So if we navigate to our scale page, we'll see that our scale is filling, and we're looking for 2,500 pounds. Again, it's going to close the bin gate when it hits the target weight minus the preact being about 300 pounds. So at 2,200 pounds, the bin gate will close, and we'll see this filling by weight change over to conveyor clean out. Okay, we're approaching 2,200. As you can see, when we hit that mark, the conveyor went into clean out, and the conveyors are going to run for 18.1 seconds. At the end of that 18.1 seconds, the conveyors will turn off, and our scale should read 2,500 pounds, which was our target. There goes our conveyors turning off. So now the loadout conveyors have turned on because we had auto loadout enabled. So if we go to our loadout page, we can see that they're running. Or I'm sorry, not both, just our treater fill conveyor is running. Our treater loadout conveyor is waiting for the drum to turn on before it turns on. So right now the seed is being carried to the treater inlet. We'll navigate to our treater page so we can see what's happening. We will give a low level to the treater. And when that happens, a window is going to pop up asking us to validate and confirm that we have entered a correct seed rate, the correct recipe has been entered for treatment, and treatment mix is prepared and pump lines are primed. We can press continue, which will start the seed wheel and the atomizer. It's actually going to start the treating process, and once the drum allows its preset time, the pump is going to turn on to try and match the seed wheel, and our seed wheel weight, our weight from the scale is going to discharge down to 0. If we go to our scale page, we can see that our scale is discharging. Once it gets down to 0, the scale gate will close, And once that happens, you can see this on the treater page. The green arrow here indicates the scale gate, which that has closed. And so once the seed goes away from the low level will lose the signal from the seed, which will turn the pump off, and the drum will go into cleanout mode, which has stopped and it started back up again. And the arrows are pointing the other direction, showing you that it is running in reverse. If we go to our loadout page, we can see that the discharge conveyor is running and the drum is running in reverse. The drum will stop after the amount of time we preset in the drum device setup. And then this conveyor, if we remember right, is going to run for an additional 10 seconds and then shut off. Once that is done, the conveyors are cleaned out. We return to the home page, and you can see that it's telling us to please print ticket now. We're going to press master print. It's going to print us a ticket from our slip ticket printer, and we will verify that the ticket has printed, and we will press yes. At that point, the system is going to save that transaction back to the database. And it's going to tell us that the order is complete by showing us this red X, and it's going to lock out our master start. So we cannot run another order until we either load in a new order that has not been ran, or or set up a new order from the touchscreen with a new order name and press Save As. Okay, now that we have printed our ticket, we can do a system print, and if we have a printer plugged in and installed to our database computer, we can press Order Receipt, which will print a receipt to on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper through a network or USB printer. We can also go back to our database, and we know we're going to be looking for test order 70, that transaction in the database. One report that I would like to point out is the pickup transactions. If you hover over the pickup transactions header and go to the print pickup transactions, the second header here, if we select that, it'll open up a report. And we want to be looking for test order 70, or we could search Wilkerson Farms as the customer. Let's search test order 70. And it's going to pull open this this order that we just ran. Now let's get rid of that, and let's search in here for, let's clear our search out, and let's just search for Wilkerson. We want to see all the orders that we ran for Wilkerson, so we can see that we have these orders here. We have this Aranda Farms. Chris is the order is named Wilkerson, so it found that one as well. But this here, what I want to point out is that this report is probably the cleanest report out of your database to actually print. This again is print pickup transactions, print pickup transactions. So we can see if we look at this test order 70, we ran 50 units. The recipe was test recipe 23. Treatment 1, we applied this many total ounces of liquid, and we did not apply anything from 2, 3, or 4. And it ran on January 9th at 5:12 p.m. So if we want to print this report, we can press this PDF report. And that's why, if we want to get rid of this Aranda Farms one here, we know that we're actually looking for Wilkerson Farms. So if I do a little bit more detailed search, Wilkerson Farms, now I have the 5 Wilkerson Farms orders that I'm actually looking for. So if I go up here and I select this PDF report button, it's going to download this report to a PDF form, and I'm going to download that file and open it up. So here is my report for all the Wilkerson Farms John Wilkerson orders that he has ran, or that I have ran for him. And I can save this, print this, to do whatever I would like. And that's a really handy report to use at the end of the year or at the end of the day to accumulate the different jobs that you have run.